Now, WPG Talk Radio 1450 brings you a very special program, The Law in Action, featuring a prominent local attorney discussing their area of expertise. Get ready to call in with your questions at 609-407-1450. That's 407-1450. Now, your host for The Law in Action, John DeMasi.
Hello, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us here for another edition of The Law in Action. I mean, what better thing is there to do on a Saturday afternoon at the shore in the summer when it's raining? I mean, rather than go to the movies, you're going to learn something here on the show today, right? And you're going to get some information. Good to have you with us. As we do each and every week here in The Law in Action, we have a different attorney who specializes in a certain area, and we have him here for the hour, and we discuss a variety of issues all related to what this particular attorney does. And we always welcome your questions at 609-407-1450. That is our number here in the studio, 609-407-1450. It's for informational purposes only, as we say at the top of the show. And we do this show to help you so that you have the information, so that if you need the services of the attorneys here on the show, certainly they're happy to help you, but we kind of do this as somewhat of preventative maintenance. Mark Karjman is back with us. We're good to have him with us. He was our leadoff hitter, as we like to say.
Good afternoon.
You did our very first show,
that's correct.
So that's why we say you're the leadoff hitter.
You did some requests for me to be cleanup, but
exactly,
I'm okay with
right,
the leadoff.
That's right. Let me tell you something. He'd be a lot better than Ryan Howard, all right?
Can't be any worse.
So that's a whole other show and a whole other issue. But Mark Karjman is here. Mark specializes in DUIs, traffic matters, and criminal defense. And certainly we know, unfortunately, a lot of people have had those problems in the past. So we have him here. We're glad to have him with us. 609-407-1450 is the number. I told you I was going to start off with this story.
Right.
So since you were on last time, coming home on a Friday night from Philadelphia, right? Now, I had been to a club, but I don't drink. But, of course, I understand that all police officers assume that everyone on the road after midnight has been drinking.
Has no other reason to be out.
Right. That's what I'm assuming that every police officer goes into this thing thinking, right? So I'm on the Atlantic City Expressway, and I have Easy Pass, so I go through the Easy Pass lane at the second toll, which is, what, the 75-cent toll? Okay, so I go through that, and I was careful with my speed, and here's the flashing lights, right? And I'm saying, wait a minute, I was doing the speed limit. What could this be? So, of course, he comes up to me, and he says, you been drinking? I said, I don't drink. Where were you? Well, I happened to be at a club.
Right.
But I drank water and soda. But, of course, he assumes that I drank liquor. And, of course, I'm fumbling for my stuff, and I can't find it because I don't keep it. I don't keep it in order. I'm just sloppy, right? So he says, well, this is your insurance card? I said, yeah, but I'm looking for my owner's card. He said, well, let me check your license, right? Now, 3 times he asked me, what did you have to drink? I said, I don't drink. He asked me another question. What did you have to drink? I don't drink. I guess he was waiting for me to...
Yeah. Right. Good thing your answer was consistent.
But I don't.
I know.
Right.
But so finally, I didn't even find my owner's card. I didn't find my registration because it was buried underneath something. He comes back and he says, here, you were changing lanes and you didn't signal. That's what he said. He said you swerved a little bit.
And that was his probable cause for pulling you over.
That was the probable cause. So my question is in telling that story, how did I handle that okay?
Yes, well, first, I'm glad you're here and not in the county jail somewhere.
Otherwise, you would have got the call.
Exactly.
It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay?
Exactly. But, yeah, you answered his questions. You told him no, which was the honest answer. He kept asking you and pressing you to see if you would admit to having consumed any alcoholic beverages. And good thing he didn't write you a ticket. You were able to get all your documents out. You didn't have any problems with your license. Your license wasn't suspended. You had proper insurance on registration on the car.
Right, yes.
And then he never ended up giving you a ticket for...
No, he gave me like a little warning thing. You know, they have those little warnings.
Right, he gave you a warning slip.
Which I guess they have to justify why they stopped you, so they give some kind of a warning.
Right.
But he said, get out of here,
Right.
just be careful. But I guess my question is it better? Now, I don't drink, so that I was telling the truth. But obviously he's asking several times because he assumes that people are drinking. So how do you recommend people approach something like that? If they had a drink, do you say I had a drink?
Yeah, well, first, it's always good to be honest. But at the same time, if you do tell the officer you did consume an alcoholic beverage, most times they're going to ask you to get out of the car. The officer's going to say, okay, I just need to perform some tests to make sure you're okay to drive. And at that time, you'll be asked to do the field sobriety test. And based upon that, you could be arrested and taken back to the station.
So that's why I guess they ask you about, did you have something to drink several times?
And most people will say, "Oh, I just had one drink," and if you're out, no one really has one drink,
right?
So they know people may be being deceitful at that time.
So that's the reason for the question being asked several times,
right?
Because if you say I had one beer, they know you probably had 3 beers,
right? Times it by 3 at least,
and you might have had 5 beers,
right?
Okay. so now we get into the field sobriety test and possibly a DUI. So obviously that's why people say right up front, no, I wasn't.
Right. The first questions are, have you been drinking? Then they'll ask you where you're coming from and where you're going. And then at that time, if they smell alcohol or based upon your driving, they'll ask you to get out of the car, perform the field sobriety test, which are usually the one-leg stand tests. You stand on one leg, count by 1,000s, approximately to 30 seconds. And then the walk and turn test is where you take 9 steps up and back, heel to toe. And they also will do the HDN test, which is the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, where they'll check the tracking in your eye and see if you can follow the pen without moving your head. Also may ask you to do the alphabet without singing, or a counting test, or a finger dexterity test. But your most common 2 tests are the walk and turn test and the one-leg stand test.
You know what was interesting? I was waiting for him to pull out the pen, the follow the pen with your eyes and don't move your head, that kind of thing. But he didn't do any of that. So I guess, well, obviously there was no liquor smell because I didn't drink anything.
Right, there was no smell. It probably looked to see if there was you had bloodshot eyes or anything like that. That's usually a common key.
I was tired.
Right.
But, I mean, that was it.
Right. Yeah, I'm guessing because you didn't admit to having any alcohol in it and he didn't smell any alcohol, there was really no reason for him to perform.
Well, I'm glad I didn't have to call you.
Good thing. Keep the number handy just in case.
If you just tuned in, this is The Law in Action. You'll find us here Saturdays 1 to 2 right here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. I'm your host, John DeMasi. Mark Kargman, our guest. Mark specializes in DUI matters, traffic matters, criminal defense. If you have a question for Mark on any of those issues, feel free to give us a call here, 609-407-1450, 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio. If you suspect that you're being, and you drank, and you're pulled over, I mean, you mentioned it. You answer the questions honestly. But if you've had 2-3 drinks and you just don't pass the tests, then you go through the field sobriety, I guess, at that point, right?
Right.
Yeah. You get a DUI. How do you handle that at that point, other than pick up the phone and call you right away?
Right. So in New Jersey, you'll be placed in handcuffs under arrest on suspicion of DUI based upon your results of the field sobriety test. At that point, you'll be taken back to the police station to give 2 breath samples on the Alka-Test machine, which is the old breathalyzer. The machine we use now is called the Alka-Test machine. You'll be asked to give in 2 breath samples, and if your result is above a .08, then you'll be given a citation for DUI, and then you'll have to call someone to pick you up. You will be released on your own recognizance if someone can come pick you up and sign you out. Otherwise, they'll keep you there for 12 hours in the station until they'll release you at that point.
12 hours they keep you?
Yes.
Pretty much?
And they also will impound your vehicle under John's Law for a period of 12 hours. You have to wait to pick up your vehicle as well as pay for the tow fee.
You can't call somebody to drive your car? No?
No, the car is automatically impounded.
Okay. So it's pretty serious.
It's pretty serious and carries a substantial amount of fines, surcharges, as well as loss of license. And there's no type of hardship license or work license in New Jersey. It's either you have your license or you don't.
So you're in hot water.
Right.
Because you can't go to work, you can't do anything, and if you get caught driving with the DUI on your license, well, you're not supposed to. You were on the show before, and then we have a caller, and you said 10 years? 10 years?
Right.
If you get the 3rd DUI?
Third offense is 10-year loss of license.
10 years?
Yes. And 180 days in jail.
That's just an incredible. I mean, to me, if I drank, that would be my reason not to.
Right. It's pretty severe.
Yeah, because it's pretty serious. And I wanted to mention about surcharges because they're pretty rough with that.
Right. Approximately $1,000 a year for 3 years. That's just from the Department of Motor Vehicles for the conviction. You'll also be fined from the court as well as having to pay to get your license restored, and also the intoxicated driver's resource class, which you have to take as well.
Okay. We'll pick that up in a moment because I want to tell you about my friend because he was paying his surcharge the other day when I was over at his store. And I was thinking about you, and I'm thinking, $800? I mean, for what? You know, because you got caught with a DUI.
Right.
You know, but it's, like I said, there's a lot of dumb things in this world. In my opinion, that's a dumb one. But let's get on to the phones. Joe is on the line. Hi, Joe. Welcome to the Law in Action.
Yes. John, like you were stopped, right? You didn't get a ticket, right?
Right.
And I would like to ask the counselor, do the police make a record that they pulled you over, and how long does it stay on your record?
There is a record on the CAD report, which when the police officers call in the dispatch, they call with your license number, and then eventually once they find out who you are, they will relay that back to the police dispatch. If they don't charge you with anything, there won't be an official record, but there would be the call and dispatch logs, which would be out there if under the Oprah Public Records Act that someone wanted to obtain, and you have approximately 5 years to obtain that information. So it doesn't go on your record per se, but those dispatch logs and that CAD report is still out there for a period of 5 years before they destroy it.
So in other words, if you're driving down a highway and they scan your tags, right, that would pop up on it?
That would pop up in their logs, but it wouldn't pop up on your record, or there wouldn't be any of a record per se, unless they ran your tags. If you were driving while suspended, then they would pull you over and then officially write you a ticket. Then that would become, a matter of more of a record.
All right, so in other words, it sticks for 5 years.
Right, just on their information in the police station, in their logs, but it's not something that would, if they run your tags, there's not going to be any record of it, on your license or anywhere else, or through motor vehicles.
I appreciate information.
Thanks for the call.
Joe, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. 609-407-1450. It's the Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2, right here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Mark Parchman, our guest. Mark is an attorney, obviously. Of course, that's why it's called the Law in Action. He specializes in criminal defense, DUIs, and traffic matters, and that's what we're talking about here. We were talking about the surcharges, and you mentioned, well, there's the court, right? Then obviously there's your insurance surcharge, and then there's another surcharge?
Right. How it works, for a first offense, usually fines come to around $700 from the court. Mm-hmm. Then you have motor vehicle surcharge, $1,000 a year for 3 years, so that's $3,000. You have to pay $100 to get your license restored when your suspension is over, and then you have to pay approximately $230 to take the Intoxicated Drivers Resource Center, which is a 2-day class on drunk driving to get your license back, and it'll also raise your insurance rates. Insurance eligibility points will go up, and you'll have higher insurance rates as well.
So after the $3,000. And then the other little money that you said, then your insurance goes up, and that goes up for what, 3 years? Is that does the surcharge stay on for 3 years with the insurance?
At least. The insurance companies are different depending on who you have, but approximately 3 to 5 years, you could expect your insurance rates to rise.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting there at my friend's store, and I see this thing, surcharge, $800 and some, and I'm like, $800 and some,
right,
for this? And it was the dumbest thing he could have ever done, because he knew he was, intoxicated, but he got in his car anyway.
Right.
Which, that's really dumb, because suppose you get in an accident. Suppose
right.
you get killed.
Yeah.
Or you kill somebody.
You could be killed.
Right.
You could be charged with a felony.
Right. I mean, very sad. But let's go back to the phone. Is it Sal? Al? Sal, hi. Welcome to the Law in Action.
Very much. I heard quite a number of years back that if you lose your license or your license is suspended, you cannot operate an outboard motor, a boat?
Yes, that's correct. There are different types of licenses for boats, but it will affect on whether or not you do have to have a valid New Jersey driver's license to operate that vehicle. So yes, that is correct.
Would that, excuse me, but does that apply for an outboard motor too?
I believe it does as well.
Okay. And that's still in effect, huh?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sal, thanks for the call. The last time you were on, we were talking about this.
We were talking about Kevin Cobb.
Kevin Cobb, the former quarterback for the Eagles, he was convicted. He was driving a boat.
Right, I think he was charged with a BUI, boating under the influence in Texas.
Right. So it's the same thing, right?
Right.
You can't operate a boat. It's the same as a car. pretty much, right?
Basically, yep, same thing. You'll be field sobriety tested as well as alcohol tested, and then it does affect your actual driver's license.
So if you're driving a boat, and I think Sal was saying an outboard motor, but that's a boat.
Right.
If you're driving a boat and you get stopped by the Coast Guard, and you get, they say, hey, you've been driving intoxicated, then it goes on your driver's license, right?
Right.
So you lose your driver's license.
You do lose your driving privileges as well.
Yeah. So, you can't escape this. I guess people got to realize that. You can't escape
this time of year, a lot of boats out there.
Exactly. So, like I said, it's one of these things, and I understand people get out there and do this, but I didn't see that, Al. Who do we have? We have Larry. Oh, okay. Hi, Larry. Welcome to the Law in Action.
Hello. Question. In reference to a DWI stop, supposing it's in Atlantic City, and it's in Atlantic City, it's ACPD, and let's say they stop somebody who's obviously and visibly drunk driving. And let's say this person turns out to be an illegal alien, like an illegal Mexican, which Atlantic City is full of. And let's say this person is drunk and has no valid driver's license. What does the policeman do? What do the police do in that case?
What they'll do is the same thing as the other case. Person could be charged with DUI as well as driving without a license. At that point, once it'll be issued into the system, it'll be up to ICE, which is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Unit, to follow up and place any type of detainer on that individual. But because most likely they won't pick it up because it's considered a traffic offense in New Jersey, that he'd actually be unlikely to be deported as a result of it. But he'd still be facing the fines and the surcharges, and he would have to obviously pay that, but he still wouldn't be able to get a license at this point. So it'd still affect that person traffically, but most likely there wouldn't be any type of immigration detainers placed upon him at that time, because immigration only usually comes after you if you're charged with a criminal offense.
Well, I've been told that in many, many cases, many infractions, traffic infractions and others committed by illegal aliens, that the police don't do anything. They just let them go. But you claim no. You claim he's subject to the same fines and penalties and court costs, etc., as anybody else.
Yes, they are subject to the same fines, and they will be given a summons to show up to court, and just like everyone else. But they won't be, taken to any type of county jail unless immigration comes in and wants that person held and puts a detainer on that person.
But, Mark, they would be arrested if it was a DUI. They would be arrested just like anybody else.
Right.
I think that's what his question is.
Right.
They would be arrested just like anybody else for the DUI.
Right. They'd be taken back to the station for the alcohol test, given their summonses.
Then they would be let go, and immigration probably wouldn't come in, you said, unless they were charged with a crime.
Most likely.
If they hit somebody and maybe killed them, then it's
right.
another
then
issue,
immigration
right?
most likely would find out and come in. But yeah, whether you're a citizen or not, or have a license or not, you'd still face the same consequences.
Okay, Larry, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. All right, 609-407-1450. That is our number here. It's the Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Mark Karjman, our guest. Mark is our DUI guy. Maybe that's your slogan now. The DUI guy.
Might have to get a new commercial.
That's right. Mark, he specializes in DUIs, traffic matters, and criminal defense. Yes, we have plenty more to talk about. We certainly welcome your calls and questions for Mark at 609-407-1450. With Mark Karjman, I'm your host, John DeMasi. We return. More Law in Action after these words.
Love lives at Sage Jewelers. Where else? Sage Jewelers is your love headquarters any time of the year. At Sage Jewelers, they know they don't own the market on love, but they do have a selection that can express your feelings in a variety of ways. Love and diamonds go together, and of course, Sage Jewelers has an exquisite selection in designer settings that will take her breath away. And all diamonds are certified by independent laboratories. Whether you're popping the question now, next week, next month, or expressing emotions that only the years have brought, Sage Jewelers can help you say it right. If you're looking at diamond remounts, that's their specialty as well. Whatever way you want to say I love you, say it at Sage Jewelers. 90 days, same as cash, financing available. Sage Jewelers, Tilton Road, Northfield, across from Friendly's.
Sage Jewelers, the ultimate expression of love.
You got pulled over recently. Unfortunately, you were charged with a DWI. So where do you go? What do you do? Before you do anything, you should contact Mark Kargman. Mark Kargman, located on the Black Horse Pike in EHT, specializes in DWI and traffic matters. It's a tough time that you're facing, and you shouldn't face it alone. Don't do it without the proper legal representation. Keep this number handy, 609-241-6244, 609-241-6244. That's the number for Mark Kargman. DWI, traffic matters, even criminal defense. Points on your driver's license? That can be devastating, especially when it comes to insurance. Without the proper legal representation, you could end up with more points than you thought possible. That's why you need an attorney like Mark Kargman. That number again, 609-241-6244, 609-241-6244 for Mark Kargman.
All right, we're back here on the Law in Action. I suggest you write this number down, and we always like to make a little bit of a joke about it, but if you get stopped, it's a serious issue. We understand that. Mark Kargman, his phone number in the office, 609-241-6244. Write it down. Keep it with you. I keep it with me.
That's always a good thing. I'll get you some more.
It was in the car that night when I got stopped, and I said, well, because I couldn't find my registration.
As long as you find the card.
But, but it's like, oh, man, I looked at it, I said, I hope I don't have to call him. I mean, this is ridiculous,
Available 24/7, though.
Right. 609-241-6244 is the number. Mark Kargman, he practices in Atlantic County. He's on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. He's pretty conveniently located. You're right next to Sussman Kia, right?
Yes, the Kia car dealer right near.
Not Sussman.
Matt Black Kia, close
Kia,
to English
yes,
Creek Avenue.
Right. It used to be Sussman years ago. That's, I go back a long way. Okay, so Law in Action here on Talk Radio 1450, 609-407-1450. Do we have somebody, Al?
No.
We don't. Okay. 609-407-1450. We have some open lines. If you have a question for Mark, feel free to call in. All right, we're talking about DUIs, and we'll get into other things later on in the show. But I guess my question is, you mentioned the fines and the surcharges and so on and so forth. Can you help a person? Because obviously they got the DUI. You can't go back and say, Your Honor, they weren't drinking because they have the test.
Right.
So you can't refute that. But what can you do to help them when they get that in that position?
Right. The first thing you want to do is meet with them, get their side of the story, find out everything that they told the police officer, as well as request all the police reports in the case, also request any videotape in the case, and you also request all the documents from the Alcatest machine, which would be the calibration records, the solution changes, the officer's certification cards for doing the field sobriety test, as well as the Alcatest machine. Look at all those documents, break them down. There are certain defenses based upon the solution change, the calibration, and the officer's training. And the first thing you want to do is try to suppress the person's reading, their BAC reading, which is if it is above a .08. You want to, if you can get that suppressed, then the next thing you do is attack the field sobriety test, find out whether the person may have had any leg injuries, which may have affected their results on the test, as well as look into if the officer properly instructed the person on the testing.
Okay, but can you go in and say, you do all that. Obviously, I know you do all that, the due diligence. But can you go in and say, listen, Your Honor, it's a first offense. The fine is normally, let's say, whatever it is. Can you get the fine cut in half? Or something like that?
Everything's set statutorily.
Okay.
If you're in the unfortunate situation where a client does have to plea or found guilty, you would always request the judge to give the person the minimums. And there are certain fines of a range of fines for every case, and it's set by statute. So the judge can't go below or above that, but there's a range. If it's in a high reading, judge may give the person a higher fine, per se. But
I see it based on the reading of the field sobriety test.
Right. If the reading comes in and it's a high reading, or whether if there's a minor accident, or if their person was charged with leaving the scene of an accident as well as the DUI, you're likely to have the judge give a higher fine. But the fines are set by the statute.
So if it's a low reading and it's the first offense, does he have the discretion to say, okay, the lowest fine according to the statute is X number of dollars. Can he do that?
Right. They
and
can
can
give
you
the
help
minimum.
him? Can you kind of negotiate that for your client to get him to that
Right.
point?
During your negotiations
Okay.
with the prosecutor, and then when you're in front of the judge always lets you speak, and at that time, you'd want to highlight the positive facts about your client and always request the minimum penalties.
Okay. All right, let's go to the phones. Darren is waiting to talk to us. Hi, Darren. Welcome to the Law in Action.
Thank you very much. How are you, gentlemen, today?
How's it going, Darren?
Good, thanks, Darren.
Good. This is my second or third time calling up and listening, and it's a great show, you guys.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
That's all I wanted to say. No, I'm only kidding you. Hey, Mark, do you get involved in any casino fraud or casino cases? Something comes to mind, the recent robbery at Caesars, and as I'm reading the article, you find out it's an inside job. The guy was a former employee there. Can you represent clients on that level, Mark, in the court of law as well as DUIs?
Yes, I do handle specialize in criminal law as well. I do handle robbery cases, which was involved at Caesar, and I believe they might have caught the 5 or 6 individuals who are suspected of being involved. Also handle all type fraud cases at the casinos, whether it's someone's passing a bad check or whether someone's getting kicked out of a nightclub. Definitely handle a lot of cases coming out of Atlantic City.
Yeah, because there's always a scam or two that we read about. With boy, I tell you, when you see television documentaries or whatever on how they steal chips, and
Right.
It's usually an inside job, and so you would handle something along that line too.
Yes, I do, and I do recall the case at the casino. I believe we're at the poker game where there may have been some fake counterfeit chips that an individual was using. I believe they were caught. Yes, I definitely handle cases like that as well.
So your practice is pretty vast then, which is good to know.
Yes, a little bit of everything, so no case too big or too small, but mostly criminal defense and DUI.
Well, Darren, write his number down. Not that you're going to need it, but write it down. You never know when you know somebody who may need it.
Wait a minute. You never know. I might need it 3 o'clock in the morning or 3 in the afternoon. You never know.
That's right, or maybe tonight.
Yeah. Well, you heard my almost case, so you never know. But it worked out okay. Darren, thanks for the call. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Darren.
And thanks for the
Have a
call.
good weekend.
You too.
So long.
609-407-1450. That's our number here, the Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2 here on Talk Radio 1450, WPG Radio. Mark Cargman here with us. Mark, again, will mention that he specializes in criminal defense, DUI, and traffic matters. We're kind of focusing on DUIs again, and you mentioned that you'll help them out in terms of a DUI case, especially if it's the first time and their field sobriety test was low. The statutes are, there's not a lot of negotiation, but at least you'll get them to the point where they're paying the least amount.
Right, and for a first offense, if the person's reading is above the legal limit, they're facing 7 months to 12 months loss of license. But if you're able to find some issues with the reading, and you get the reading suppressed, that would knock the suspension down to 3 months on what's called a first-tier DUI, which is based upon the field sobriety test and any admission to alcohol. But at least that way you can cut down the suspension in half, basically. And then if you can attack the field sobriety from there, you may be able to plead the case out, get the DUI dismissed, and get the person to plead to a reckless driving.
Do you, when you handle the DUIs, okay, and I wanted to ask you because a few friends of mine, know-it-alls, I like to call them, would say, well, you could probably go in there and you don't really need an attorney. And I always say to them, I said, I don't do anything anymore, no matter what it is, without an attorney.
Right.
And, I had an issue a couple weeks ago. I called you about it,
Right.
and you gave me a little advice, which I appreciate. But, I mean, what happened? Could you do that? I mean, you could do it, but is that like suicide going into a DUI case without representation?
It basically is, and even if a person did try to represent themselves, the judge would most likely at least assign the person the public defender if they qualified it, and definitely highly suggest that the person hire an attorney if they're financially able to, because there are a lot of defenses that the average layperson wouldn't know in regards to how to look at these documents in regards to the Alcatraz machine, and without being legally trained, although the person may know they may have been in the wrong or know they were able to over the legal limit, there's definitely a lot of defenses, and you definitely should take your chances and hire an attorney, because if you can beat the case, it'll save you a lot of money as well as loss of your license.
Well, you mentioned earlier you were going through all of the things that could be wrong in terms of, calibrating the last time you were on. We were talking about calibrating the breathalyzer,
right?
Those kinds of things, and you make sure that all of those things are done. But the average person, we don't know anything about that,
right? If the average person saw the documents, they would have no idea how to look at it or be able to read and tell what the documents actually mean.
Right. I mean, you can't read anything today.
Right.
I mean, if you try to read your insurance contract, forget it. You can't even read that.
Pages and pages.
Exactly. So, all right, more to talk about here on the show. The Law in Action. Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Mark Karjman, our guest. Mark, he is a local attorney. He practices on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. He specializes in criminal defense, DUIs, and traffic matters. We're going to get into a little bit of traffic and some criminal defense issues in just a couple of minutes. We're coming up on a break, but if you have a question, 609-407-1450. That is our number here in the studio. Questions for Mark, feel free to call us, 609-407-1450. With Mark Karjman, I'm your host, John DeMasi. We return more of the show after these words.
Alimony, child support, custody, equitable distribution. These are all terms you hear when you're dealing with the end of a marriage. Unfortunate but true. So where do you turn at times like these? You need experienced, knowledgeable representation as only Cynthia Brassington can provide. For many years, Cynthia Brassington has been practicing family law in the area and has helped many deal with the trials and tribulations of a divorce. If you're thinking about it or currently facing divorce, then you should contact Cynthia Brassington at 609-601-2323. That's 609-601-2323. Conveniently located in Linwood Commons on Route 9 in Linwood, Cynthia Brassington has helped hundreds of families over the years deal with the difficulties of divorce. Make sure you receive your equitable distribution. Call Cynthia Brassington, 609-601-2323. Love lives at Sage Jewelers. Where else? Sage Jewelers is your love headquarters any time of the year. At Sage Jewelers, they know they don't own the market on love, but they do have a selection that can express your feelings in a variety of ways. Love and diamonds go together, and of course, Sage Jewelers has an exquisite selection in designer settings that will take her breath away. And all diamonds are certified by independent laboratories. Whether you're popping the question now, next week, next month, or expressing emotions that only the years have brought, Sage Jewelers can help you say it right. If you're looking at diamond remounts, that's their specialty as well. Whatever way you want to say I love you, say it at Sage Jewelers. 90 days, same as cash, financing available. Sage Jewelers, Tilton Road, Northfield, across from Friendly's.
Sage Jewelers, the ultimate expression of love.
Welcome back to The Law in Action. Mark Karjman, if you'd like to reach him, again, Mark would like to help you, but he hopes he doesn't, you don't need him.
Hopefully, but a lot of people will.
Right. 609-241-6244. That is his number in his office, 609-241-6244. I'll give you his website, too. It's Mark with a K, Karjman, M-A-R-K, and then K-A-R-G-M-A-N. So it's markkarjman.com. That's his website. But again, his phone number, 609-241-6244. Write it down. You never know when you may need his services. This is The Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Again, Mark Karjman with us. He specializes in DUIs, traffic matters, and criminal defense. Let's go back to the phones. I believe Joe is waiting for us. Hi, Joe. Welcome to The Law in Action.
Yeah, how you doing?
How you doing, Joe?
Hi, Joe.
For the attorney. Recently got pulled over, and another police officer came in the window and told me how fast I was going when I know I wasn't going that fast. Is that really just a judgment call on his part, or is there a way to track exactly what that radar gun came up with?
Right, and sometimes they will use a radar gun, and then if you hire an attorney and fight the case, you'll be able to get all the radar records and find out whether the radar was in proper working order, and also find out if the officer was properly trained on how to use that radar. Sometimes the officer will just tell by pacing vehicles that based upon his training and experience that you exceeded the speed limit, or if the officer was behind you and he was speeding and still keeping up with you, then he would know that you were going above the legal limit. But it is based upon the radar device, and there are certain defenses that you could definitely use.
How fast were you going, Joe, and how fast do you think you were going?
There was probably, I guess, about a 5 to 7 mile per hour difference in what he said I was going versus, what I think. So obviously that's may not seem like a lot, but when it comes to potential fines, that could that's a big difference.
Right, definitely. And if you go between 1 and 14 miles over, you're looking at 2 points. 15 to 29, 4 points, and anything over that would be 5 points. So yeah, the speed limit and the range of points as well as fines definitely do come into play.
Yeah, Joe, you may want to give Mark a call. I mean, he'll be happy to talk to you. You don't charge to talk to them.
Yes, be happy to talk to him after the show or anytime.
I mean, you can call him and find out a little more about that, but it might be a good idea for you to do that.
Okay.
All right, thanks a lot
Thanks
for the call.
call.
Joe, we appreciate it. Which brings me to another story. You like my stories,
You
right?
have a lot of good stories.
I like my stories. So it's about, I'm going to say, probably about 8 years ago, all right? I'm living with a female, and I allow her to drive my car.
Okay.
All right? And it was late at night, and we're, I'm sleeping in the back. So she drives home, and we're down this stretch, and I remember it distinctly, Route 72 in the Manahawkin area.
Okay.
There's a long road there, and it's just, at night, cars just go. And I think the speed limit was 65. I think it was 55.
Okay.
She was doing 72 in a 55. He stops her, gives her a ticket. I pay it. She gets how many points?
4 points.
4 points. Gets this thing in the mail. She says, "What's this?" Now, she wasn't born in this country and is not from this country.
Okay.
She's a naturalized citizen. So she doesn't understand all of this stuff,
Right.
right? So then I realized I should have hired somebody like yourself to at least represent her so that maybe reduce that.
Right.
So in this case, and I bring this up because Joe's case sounds similar, can you help in that scenario?
Right, and definitely. And a lot of people won't know the ramifications regarding points and any surcharges from DMV because a lot of tickets are payable just through the court system. You could just cut the check and send it in, but then there could be adverse consequences against you. But I could have helped her in that situation downgrade the ticket from speeding to what's called unsafe operation, which you pay approximately a $400 fine, but allows you to get no points.
Yes, and the 4 points, that stays with you for how long?
Points stay on your record every year. 3 points go away if you drive violation free. So those points could eventually go away. Or if you take a defensive driving class online or in person, that also helps you get some points away as well.
Okay, so it would take a period of 4 or 5 years for it to go away?
For the 4 points,
Yeah.
if you drove 1 year without getting any tickets and took a defensive driving class in 1 year, she could have wiped away those 4 points.
And that's good because don't they check your license when they give you your car insurance? They check your license for points?
Right.
And if you have points, you pay more,
Right.
correct?
They'll check for points as well as accidents, and your rates will be affected by your driving record.
All right, we're going to we like stories. And I know you have a story, and then I have a story about lending people cars or putting a car that they're driving in your name, which, I've done that too, and
Right.
that's another dumb thing. Talk about, why don't they call this, instead of the Law in Action, John's Dumb Stories, okay? But you had a story, and it's unfortunate, but tell the story of this woman who lends her nephew a car, and then he's in he commits robberies with this car.
Right.
I mean, this is
Had
this is bizarre.
some clients over the years where, lending a family member a car, and if that individual ends out, being involved in an accident or going out committing a robbery in that car could become evidence, and that car could become forfeited. And just by lending someone your vehicle, you could jam yourself up as well as lose any personal property that you may have given out. So you have to be careful of what type of property, especially a car. If you give that to someone, you have to know what they're going to be doing with the car.
And so this woman lends, was it her nephew? Is that what it was?
Yes.
She lends the nephew the car, and he commits
an armed robbery.
An armed robbery. So now does she lose that car forever, or what? Because it was used in a robbery?
Because it was used in a robbery, the prosecutor's office wanted to file a forfeiture motion to keep the vehicle because it was part of the crime used in the commission of the offense. Basically, it's a negotiation process where you would have to basically try to buy your car back to get it back. So it's definitely a civil process, but it would be part of the criminal case as well.
So she could lose her car. Now, what about legal issues for her? Does she get in any legal trouble?
Not so much legally, just could possibly lose the car. She could, if someone was injured in an accident or anything like that, the other people could try to sue her for negatively, entrusting her car to another individual.
So it's not a good idea. I guess what we're hearing here is not a good idea. And this was a relative, so she lent a car to a relative. It's not a good idea to lend a car.
Yeah, it's not a good idea, especially if the person might be doing something that you don't know about, and it's tough to tell what a person may be involved in, but just be careful with who you lent your car to.
Well, over the years, I've helped some people, and many years ago, a friend of mine didn't have credit, couldn't get a car, so I put a car in my name, and he drives it.
Okay.
And what do you think he does? He cracks up the car.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, pretty seriously, all right? Now, at the time, he was drinking, but he somehow got out of this.
Okay.
Right? Well, I get the insurance bill, okay? The insurance goes up because I had my car, and, of course, this car that he's driving, so there's two cars on it. The insurance doubles.
Right.
Because he had a pretty serious accident that was considered his fault, all right? So now, here I am having to pay double. Of course, he's paying me part of it, but I'm still paying more because he had an accident.
Right.
So, moral of the story, like you said, don't put a car for somebody else. Don't put it in your name for somebody else.
Right, because you could be liable for someone else's actions.
So you like my stories, don't you?
Yes, I do.
609.
I think we should add an hour to the show.
609. Al's cracking up here with these stories. And
he makes me feel so much better about myself.
Right.
When I hear John.
Yeah. And these are the clean ones, Al. All right? 609-407-1450. That is our number here in the studio. It's WPG Talk Radio 1450, The Law in Action. Saturdays, we are here from 1 to 2, and Mark Card's been with us. Always good to have Mark with us with our talking about DUIs and traffic matters and criminal defense. We were talking about DUIs earlier, and we kind of got into traffic issues. It seems to me, tell me if this is wrong of this conclusion that I'm kind of gathering, that with some traffic matters, it seems like there's more room for you to help people than with a DUI. I mean, you can still help them with the DUI, but the traffic matters, maybe you can do a little better for them because it seems there's some kind of little more leeway. Is that correct?
I would say I can definitely help them equally with the DUIs, but there are more plea bargaining options with certain traffic offenses, whereas in New Jersey, basically there's a non-plea bargaining state in regards to DUIs as well as drug offenses, where you'd really have to beat those cases outright. But with certain traffic offenses, you can definitely get them downgraded, whether it be, speeding, careless driving. You can definitely get those downgraded, as well as, if you're caught driving while suspended, but then you're able to be restored and get those charges downgraded as well.
Well, you mentioned earlier, and we had a caller, Joe, when he was talking about 5 to 7 miles, and then I was telling you my story. So there's those numbers work if you get it reduced, because then there's less points, less insurance issues.
Right.
So that's where it becomes important.
Right. Every mile an hour does have an effect on a speeding
Right, because
case.
5 miles is better than 15.
Right, exactly. And also people with out-of-state licenses, person comes down from Pennsylvania, gets pulled over from speeding. You definitely need to hire an attorney to see how those ramifications would play out, not only in New Jersey, but also, say, if you're from Pennsylvania as well.
Right. Okay, let's go back to the phones. Bill is waiting to talk to us. Hi, Bill. Welcome to the Law in Action.
How you doing?
How you doing, Bill?
Fine. I know someone that just lost his license for 10 years.
Whoa.
Okay.
But they went back to 1985. And every time, he has not such a good driver's record, but can they go back to 1985?
Yes.
To make it that he had four DWIs?
Yes, anything on your driving record stays there forever. It cannot be expunged like certain criminal offenses. So the prosecutor will have your driving record from the day the person got their driver's license up until now. Prior DUIs do count, but if you hire an attorney, you could possibly file post-conviction.
He had an attorney.
Okay.
He had an attorney. It cost him $1,000. They lost his license for 10 years.
Okay, yeah, and I'm sure that attorney looked into his prior DUIs to see if they could be vacated under a post-conviction relief application.
That doesn't sound fair.
Yeah, definitely not.
You could go rob a bank and you go to jail and come back out, and you don't get go back to jail again if you stub your toe on a curb.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely some harsh penalties, as well as if there is a 10-year gap in between this DUI and the prior DUI, they will be stepped down and be treated, one offense lower. So I'm not sure, about your friend's situation.
Well, he was like 1980. They went all the way back to 1985.
Okay, and with the 10 years.
And the last one that he had was 1990.
Okay.
And then somebody ran into him, and he was I guess he wasn't drunk, but in Jersey you're drunk if you have 2 drinks.
Right. You never know what your BAC is going to be.
Yeah, but they went back from 90 all the way back to 85. I don't think that's fair.
Right. Yeah, and it's definitely New Jersey is a strict state on drunk driving.
Anything you can do about something like that? Anything?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, is there anything?
Right, what we want to do is...
Does he have any recourse at this point?
We would want to open up his files from his previous cases to see if he had an attorney and to see if there's anything we can do to try to vacate those convictions so he'd be treated as a less offender now.
Okay, so if you vacated those convictions, then he doesn't have
Right, then he wouldn't
DUIs.
be facing the 10 years. So that's what we do in those cases with order DUIs.
Bill, what I would suggest, I gave out Mark's number, and I'll give it out again. Maybe you want to call or have your friend call Mark, and perhaps there's something he can do at this point to try to help him out.
Sure, we can possibly try to vacate.
Okay, it doesn't cost anything to call him. Right. Okay? Thanks a lot for the call. We appreciate it. It's The Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Mark Karjman with us. Mark is our... I'm going to start calling you that, our DUI guy.
Sure.
But he does more than that, okay? He specializes in criminal defense, DUIs, and traffic matters. Mark Karjman, he practices his offices on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. And we'll give out his number after the break. With Mark Karjman, I'm your host, John DeMasi, 609-407-1450. We have a couple of minutes left of the show. If you want to call in and ask Mark a question, feel free. 609-407-1450. We're coming back. More of The Law in Action after these words.
You got pulled over recently. Unfortunately, you were charged with a DWI. So where do you go? What do you do? Before you do anything, you should contact Mark Karjman. Mark Karjman, located on the Black Horse Pike in EHT, specializes in DWI and traffic matters. It's a tough time that you're facing, and you shouldn't face it alone. Don't do it without the proper legal representation. Keep this number handy, 609-241-6244, 609-241-6244. That's the number for Mark Karjman, DWI, traffic matters, even criminal defense. Points on your driver's license? That can be devastating, especially when it comes to insurance. Without the proper legal representation, you could end up with more points than you thought possible. That's why you need an attorney like Mark Karjman. That number again, 609-241-6244, 609-241-6244 for Mark Karjman. Alimony, child support, custody, equitable distribution. These are all terms you hear when you're dealing with the end of a marriage. Unfortunate but true. So where do you turn at times like these? You need experienced, knowledgeable representation as only Cynthia Brassington can provide. For many years, Cynthia Brassington has been practicing family law in the area and has helped many deal with the trials and tribulations of a divorce. If you're thinking about it or currently facing divorce, then you should contact Cynthia Brassington at 609-601-2323. That's 609-601-2323. Conveniently located in Linwood Commons on Route 9 in Linwood, Cynthia Brassington has helped hundreds of families over the years deal with the difficulties of divorce. Make sure you receive your equitable distribution. Call Cynthia Brassington, 609-601-2323.
All right, we're back here on The Law in Action. I'm going to give this number out again. I'll give it out a couple of times before we leave you this afternoon. 609-241-6244. That's the number for Mark Karjman. Mark, again, specializing in criminal defense, DUIs, and traffic matters. Write it down. Just keep it by, or maybe you want to hang it on your refrigerator, one of those kind of things, whatever.
Keep it everywhere.
Right. Keep it everywhere. 609-241-6244. That is his number. Mark Karjman. He's on the Black Horse Pike in EHT. And again, specializing in criminal defense, DUIs, and traffic matters. It's The Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Again, our number here, we have a couple of minutes left of the show, 609-407-1450, if you want to jump in quickly with a question for Mark. Earlier, a caller was talking about that robbery at the casino and talking about criminal, and I know that you specialize in that as well, and that's kind of a different area than the traffic stuff.
Right.
Because the traffic's like the DUIs, like you said. It's cut and dried. This is the statute. This is the penalty, et cetera, et cetera. But you've handled a lot of criminal cases.
Right.
What do you do when something happens where, you're charged with a crime? What is the first thing a person should do? Call you, obviously, right?
Yeah, definitely. You want to get the facts of the case from the person, find out what degree of charges they're charged with. In New Jersey, there are 4 degrees of felonies: first, second, third, and fourth. First being more serious, your murder type cases. Fourth being your less serious, as well as there are certain misdemeanors in New Jersey which are known as disorderly persons offenses, which are heard in your smaller municipal courts. Felony cases are heard in your county superior courts for the criminal cases. What you want to do is, get the discovery, get all the police reports, find out if the person has a criminal record, find out which judge and prosecutor you're in front of, and then fight the case from there. See if you have any witnesses that you can use on your behalf, whether or not you need to send out a private investigator to take any statements from any witnesses, and then determine your plan of action and find out, is this a case you want to try, is this a case you want to plea bargain, or is the person eligible for any diversionary program like the PTI, pretrial intervention, which keeps the person's record clean.
Now, you just said a lot, and obviously you're earning your money right away with these kinds of things, because there's a lot of stuff that you have to do to prepare a defense. But in general, are you able to, and I always like to ask you this because people going into a criminal situation are probably really scared.
Right.
Are you able to help them, whether it's psychologically or helping them in terms of getting them through this?
Right.
Are you able to get them off of a situation?
Right, definitely. And a lot of times attorneys really are psychologists, because the person will come in, with a lot of possible baggage from this case, as well as, some hardships they may have had previously in their life. So you really have to be a good listener as an attorney. And 2 goals in every case is to keep a person out of jail and prison, and also keep their record clean if possible. So they're always your 2 goals, because a criminal record will have an effect on a person's life going forward with jobs and employment, as well as if going to jail would also negatively affect a person's life and their family.
I wanted to point this out. We mentioned it last time you were on, but I think it bears mentioning again, expungement, because you're right. Today, everybody checks everything.
Right, even for minor jobs.
Right, you can't get a job, and again, I can't speak for Wawa or McDonald's, but I'm sure they probably check.
Right.
Because people are dealing with money.
Right, background checks are thorough nowadays.
Right. But expungement, you said last time, let's see if I remember this, with the DUIs, that can never get expunged.
Never be expunged. Doesn't show up on your criminal record, but does show up on your driving traffic record.
Okay. But you can expunge a crime after how many years?
If any case gets dismissed, you can immediately do it. If you plead guilty to an ordinance violation, that's 2 years. Plead guilty to a disorderly persons offense is 5 years. If you plead guilty to a felony, it's 10 years, but you can make the application for the expungement after 5 years if you can show good cause.
Okay, so that you can get off. And I think the gentleman was saying to you earlier, you can rob a bank and you can get that expunged.
Right. Certain crimes like murder you can't expunge.
Like murder you can't, but you can rob a bank and get that expunged. But you can't get a DUI.
Right. Common sense-wise, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense, but then again, that's for another show and another discussion. But with a particular criminal defense, and when you get into you get a lot of different situations, I know that.
Right.
And you are able to kind of walk them through it, and then hopefully either the sentence is reduced or the fine is reduced, correct?
Right.
And your main goal is to keep them out of jail.
Right, keep them out of jail, keep their record clean, and you always want to be upfront with them and tell them the maximum penalties that they're facing with these crimes, and then you want to tell them what your plan of action is going to be to defend them.
I'm going to put you on the spot here for a minute. What's the most difficult case you ever had?
I would say your child sexual assaults, they're the most difficult cases. Any crimes involving children, any type of DIFAS cases, they're the ones that, are really emotional.
So you had some of those?
Yes, as well as, your murder cases where, you look at the other side and they lost a family member and there's no way to bring that person back. But, you just try to defend your client the best you can, but there are definitely emotions on each side. And, if you go to courtroom and you see the victim's family there, that's always tough as well.
I mean, your job is you're representing that client, so your job is to do what you can to either reduce the sentence, get it thrown out, whatever the case happens to be. And if the other side has the cheering section in the court, you can't let that affect you.
Obviously. No, you can't. Right. Your goal and your loyalty is to your client. You have to do whatever you can for them, no matter what they're charged with, whether it be a serious crime or a minor crime. You have to treat them the same way.
What's the common thing? I know you get a lot of DUIs. I know you get a lot of traffics.
Right.
I know you get that. But on the criminal side, what's the most common call that you get for somebody with a criminal issue?
I would say guns and drugs, especially this time of year where people are outside more. Drugs are in all communities now, especially heroin. If everyone sees that in the newspaper, heroin crimes are on the rise. Overdoses are on the rise, as well as gun crimes as well.
Well, remind me next time you're here. I have a gun story to tell. Okay. But I'll save
what
that.
a surprise!
Hopefully, it's not on you today.
No, it's not on me. No, it's so crazy. But in any case, Mark, as always, been a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening.
You bring a lot to the table, and we'll have you back next month. You're part of the team.
Look forward to it.
You're part of the team now. You're the leadoff hitter, and maybe someday the cleanup hitter. Maybe someday the Phillies will call him.
We'll see.
You never know. Mark Karjman, our guest. He, again, practices criminal defense, DUIs, and traffic matters. His number, 609-241-6244. Again, 609-241-6244. His website, Mark with a K, Mark Karjman, also with a K, markkarjman.com. You want to check him out on the web. You want to give him a call. He's happy to talk to you, 609-241-6244. And with that, we put the wraps on another edition of The Law in Action. Don't forget, we're here every Saturday, 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Cynthia Brassington with us next week talking about family law, divorce, and those kind of wonderful things. She'll be with us next week. We hope you'll join us. For Mark Karjman, for Al, who does a great job here, I'm your host, John DeMasi. Thanks for listening. Have yourself a great week. Talk to you next Saturday, 1 p.m. What am I saying, 1 a.m.? Crazy. I'm not going to be here 1 a.m. 1 p.m. The Law in Action here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Take care.